You fall asleep perfectly fine, your head hits the pillow, you drift off, the house is totally quiet, and everything is, like, peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
But then the clock strikes 3:00 a.m., and suddenly you're tossing, you're turning, and your brain is just absolutely flooded with these anxious dreams about tomorrow's big presentation or, that looming doctor's appointment.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's the worst.
It really is. So today, we are pulling from this fascinating piece in Psychology Today. It's by cognitive psychologist Dr. Susanna Penningroth, and she looks at this brand new 2026 sleep lab research to uncover the exact, the biological mechanism your brain uses to sabotage your sleep right before a stressful event.
Right.
And more importantly, we're doing a deep dive into how you can actually physically shut that mechanism down.
Because I think the key thing for you to realize here is that 3 a.m. wake up, it isn't just like generalized anxiety floating around in your subconscious.
Yeah.
There is a very specific, measurable psychological process happening. Your brain is actively running a program, even if it feels totally awful in the moment.
Right. And to understand the mechanics of that program, we really need to look at what this feels like when the stakes are high. Dr. Penningroth actually kicks off her article with this deeply relatable personal anecdote.
The sailing trip.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she and her husband took this 7-day live-aboard sailing course in the San Juan Islands off Washington State. And, I mean, the training was intense. They were learning how to deal with absolute worst-case maritime catastrophes.
Yeah, it was essentially a week of continuous acute stressors. I mean, they were running these cabin fire drills in tiny confined spaces and then undergoing actual hypothermia training in the freezing water.
Right. Plus, they had these crew overboard drills. They had this life preserver that stood in for a drowning sailor, and they named him Bob.
Good old Bob.
Right. But the detail that really stands out from her story is that despite running these drills repeatedly, they never actually managed to rescue Bob. Yeah, Bob was just lost at sea every single time. And you really have to look at the compounded psychological load here.
Yeah.
She notes her husband had recently made her watch that movie, All Is Lost.
Oh, the Robert Redford one.
Yeah, where he's just alone on a sinking boat having a terrible time. And on top of that, she had also recently flipped a raft on a whitewater trip. So her baseline for water-based anxiety was completely maxed out.
And she knew that at the very end of the week, there was this final racing exam.
Right.
Which required them to sail aggressively fast and practice something called heeling. It's where you're at a 30-degree angle and the boat is tipping severely sideways in the water.
Just terrifying.
So she is carrying past trauma, the immediate stress of failing all these drills, and the looming threat of a physical exam.
And the result is that by day 5, she's having these severe nightmares every single night. Her sleep is completely ruined, her dread is peaking, and she ultimately ends up abandoning ship-like.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively. She just had to leave the course.
Wow.
Yeah. Reading her experience, it kind of feels like the sleeping brain acts as this incredibly neurotic personal assistant.
I like that analogy.
Like, you hire this assistant to help you recharge, right?
Yeah.
But instead of letting you sleep, they insist on running a full sensory danger simulator all night long.
Yeah.
They're just standing next to your bed going, hey, what if the boat tips tomorrow? Let's run a simulation. What if Bob drowns again? Let's run a simulation.
And what's fascinating here is that this danger simulator concept, it isn't just a metaphor. It is a measurable cognitive state.
Really?
Yeah. Even before we dive into the 2026 clinical data, we can actually look at prior research that tracked this exact phenomenon in real-world, high-stakes environments. Yeah. There was a French research team that followed a group of students preparing for a notoriously difficult entrance exam for medical training.
Oh, man, that is an event that alters the trajectory of your entire life. The pressure there is immense.
Exactly. And the researchers found that right before the exam, about 60% of the students dreamed specifically about the test.
Which makes sense.
It does, but the content of the dreams is what really matters. They weren't dreaming of success. The dreams were overwhelmingly focused on failure, like arriving late, forgetting the material, being locked out of the room.
Classic anxiety dreams.
Right. And predictably, those specific nightmares were accompanied by reports of significantly fragmented, poor quality sleep compared to their normal baseline.
Okay, I hear you on the medical students. But okay, let's unpack this on a clinical level. How do scientists actually isolate tomorrow's stress from tonight's bad dreams?
Good question.
I mean, it's one thing to observe stressed students or, sailors, but to prove the mechanics of it, you really need to transition into a controlled environment.
You do.
And that brings us to the 2026 study by a Swiss research team, Sandrine Bazelja and Bjorn Rasch.
Yeah, so Baselja and Rash wanted to understand the temporal dynamics of these dreams.
What does that mean, temporal dynamics?
Basically, they didn't just want a morning after survey asking if people had bad dreams. They wanted to capture exactly when the dream content shifted in real time throughout the night.
Oh, wow.
So they designed this highly controlled sleep lab experiment where they brought young adults in for 3 separate nights. The first night was just an adaptation night.
Just to get used to all the wiring in the unfamiliar bed, I assume.
Exactly. Then they introduced a stressful anticipation night and a relaxing anticipation night.
And the way they set the table for those nights is key here. Before the participants went to sleep on the stressful night, researchers told them, hey, tomorrow you're going to have to wake up, prepare a speech, and solve these really difficult math problems while being strictly evaluated.
Sounds terrible.
Right. But then for the relaxing condition, they told them they would get to experience an immersive virtual environment. So just like walking along a virtual beach or sitting in a peaceful meadow.
So the participants go to sleep either totally dreading the math or looking forward to the beach.
Exactly.
But here's where the methodology gets pretty aggressive. To capture those temporal dynamics we talked about, the researchers didn't actually let them sleep through the night. They woke the participants up to 8 times. 4 times in the early part of the night and 4 times in the late part of the night.
Wait, hold on. 8 times.
Yeah, every single time asking what was on their mind.
If you wake me up 8 times a night, I'm going to have a nightmare just from being annoyed at the researchers.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that completely invalidate the test? How is that a fair measure of a normal sleep cycle if you are actively ruining the sleep?
That is the exact critique sleep researchers anticipate, which is why the protocol has to account for it.
Okay, how?
Well, the adaptation night establishes a baseline for the disruption of being woken up. But more importantly, the researchers were analyzing the delta, the difference between the stressful night and the relaxing night.
Because the wake-ups happened on both nights.
Exactly. The highly disruptive 8 wake-up protocol was identical for both. So the interruptions were a constant. The variable was the anticipation.
I see.
And the findings were profound. The dreams didn't just start stressful and stay stressful. As the wake-up time drew near, like as morning approached, the dreams specifically escalated in their stress levels.
So the brain was actively reactivating its concerns about the future math test late in the sleep cycle.
Yep.
So the closer the threat gets, the louder the danger simulator runs.
Yes, precisely. And furthermore, they found that anticipating this stress actively reduced physical markers of high-quality sleep. It wasn't just a bad narrative in the mind. The anticipation was literally suppressing slow-wave sleep.
Okay, slow wave sleep. Just as a reminder, we're talking about the deep restorative sleep phase here.
Right.
This is the stage where your body physically repairs tissue and clears metabolic waste from the brain. If you suppress that, you are physically compromising the person's ability to perform the next day.
Absolutely. And the mechanism behind that suppression is entirely physiological. When you anticipate a stressful event, your brain triggers a low-level cortisol drip.
Cortisol, so the stress hormone.
Right. And its presence keeps the brain's hyperarousal system engaged. For you to enter slow-wave sleep, your brain waves actually need to slow down into low-frequency delta waves.
But the cortisol is blocking it.
Exactly. Because that hyperarousal system is being fed a steady trickle of cortisol from your anticipatory anxiety, the brain physically cannot drop into those restorative delta wave frequencies. It just keeps you hovering in lighter, more easily disrupted stages of sleep.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because from an evolutionary standpoint, this seems like a terrible design flaw.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, why would human biology evolve to trigger a cortisol drip that deprives you of delta waves right before you need to perform at your absolute best? You are exhausting the system right before the critical moment.
Well, to understand the evolutionary logic there, we really have to look at how the brain prioritizes information. The sleeping brain is not just some passive tape recorder replaying your day. It is an active prediction machine trying to secure your future. In cognitive psychology, this mechanism is called the intention superiority effect.
Wait, intention superiority effect. Does that mean the brain physically prioritizes our to-do lists over deep sleep?
Yes. It prioritizes what psychologists call prospective memory tasks.
Okay.
A prospective memory is simply your ability to remember to execute a planned action in the future. So it could be remembering to take a medication at 2:00 p.m. or, remembering to pick up your dry cleaning.
Got it.
Research demonstrates that these intentions show a significantly higher level of neural activation than other types of memory. The brain basically tags them as critical.
And I'm guessing this happens automatically.
Completely automatically. You don't have to consciously try to keep the intention active. The brain does all the heavy lifting for you. And crucially, this neural activation gets stronger and stronger as the time to perform the action approaches.
Okay, so it's like having a smartphone where you've left a navigation app running in the background.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like closing your eyes and going to sleep
Yeah.
and just turning off the screen. But that upcoming stressful task, that's the GPS. It's constantly pinging your location, constantly calculating the route for tomorrow, and actively draining the battery.
And in this case, the battery is your slow wave sleep.
Exactly. The screen is dark, but the processor is just maxed out because it absolutely refuses to let the system fully power down until you reach the destination.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can really see why the human brain held onto this system. In our waking life, this unconscious anticipation is a phenomenal survival tool.
How so?
Well, the intention superiority effect ensures we don't forget vital, life-sustaining tasks. If you're a hunter-gatherer and you need to remember to check a snare at dawn to feed your group,
Right.
or even if you are a modern professional who needs to submit a critical grant proposal by 9:00 a.m., that automatic neural tagging keeps you alive and employed. It forces the important things to the very top of your mental inbox.
But the brain doesn't just shut that prioritization off because you're unconscious.
Nope. In sleep, this exact same survival mechanism becomes highly disruptive.
The brain doesn't know the difference between, I need to remember to survive a tiger attack tomorrow, and I need to remember to do a math problem in a sleep lab tomorrow.
Exactly. It simply recognizes an impending high-stakes event, increases memory activation, drips the cortisol, and fires up the danger simulator.
So it sacrifices the physical repair of slow-wave sleep in order to keep the priority task active.
Yes. The brain is surfacing related thoughts and feelings in your dreams to mentally rehearse the upcoming stressor. It's attempting to give you an advantage, with the highly unfortunate side effect of completely destroying your cognitive baseline in the process.
So what does this all mean for someone listening to this right now who, has a major presentation at 9 a.m. tomorrow? We know the mechanism now.
Right.
We know the intention superiority effect is a feature of human memory, and we know the cortisol is blocking the delta waves. But understanding the biology doesn't make staring at the ceiling at 4 a.m. any less miserable.
No, it doesn't.
So how do we shut the background app down? How do we take back the night?
Well, the good news is that we are not entirely at the mercy of our neurochemistry. Dr. Penningroth points to several evidence-based solutions that directly counter this mechanism.
Okay.
The absolute gold standard in the field right now, the one with the strongest clinical evidence, is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI.
And CBTI isn't just like basic talk therapy, right? It's not just sitting on a couch discussing your dreams.
No, not at all. It is a highly structured program designed to physically sever the neurological links that are causing the problem.
How does it do that?
A core component of CBTI is something called stimulus control. When you lie in bed awake, tossing and turning with anticipatory anxiety, you are neurologically training your brain to associate the physical mattress with the release of stress hormones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your bed literally becomes a cue for hyperarousal. CBTI actually forces you to get out of bed if you aren't sleeping within 20 minutes.
Really? Just get up.
Yes. You go to another room, you do a quiet activity, and you only return when you are physically exhausted. Over time, this severs the link between the bed and the anxiety, reprogramming the brain to view the bed strictly as a cue for sleep.
It breaks the cycle.
Exactly.
And outside of formal therapy, I know the literature also heavily emphasizes rigorous sleep hygiene. The article references a brochure from the National Institutes of Health, which outlines the parameters.
Right, the basics.
Yeah, maintaining a strict regular sleep schedule even on weekends, keeping the room cool and dark, and critically limiting large meals close to bedtime.
That meal part is huge.
It is. A heavy meal causes physiological arousal like elevated heart rate, digestion spikes that mimics the physical markers of stress. You have to signal to your body that the environment is safe and calm, reducing the baseline arousal so that the cortisol drip doesn't completely overwhelm the system.
And beyond the environmental factors, there are targeted stress reduction techniques that directly intercept the intention superiority effect.
Like what?
Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool here. The entire goal of mindfulness is anchoring your attention to the present moment, usually through the breath.
Okay.
By doing this, you are actively severing the prospective memory activation. You are training the brain to stop forecasting.
You are intentionally closing the background app. You're
Mhm.
telling the brain, hey, I acknowledge we have a destination tomorrow, but right now the only task is breathing. Stop calculating the route.
Exactly. And progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR, takes this a step further by utilizing a biofeedback loop.
How does PMR work?
It involves systematically tensing and then releasing different muscle groups, starting from your toes and working all the way up to your head. When the brain anticipates stress, it prepares the body for action by increasing muscle tension.
Like getting ready for a fight.
Right. So by consciously forcing those muscles into a state of deep relaxation, you send a physical signal back up the vagus nerve to the brain. The feedback loop tells the brain, the body is relaxed, we are not under threat, you can halt the stress response.
Oh, I see.
It physically lowers the hyperarousal, paving the way for those delta waves.
I love how Dr. Penningroth brings all this clinical data back to her sailing anecdote at the end of the article.
Yeah, that was great.
She says she actually plans to try sailing again, utilizing these exact techniques to manage her physiological arousal. But she's also deploying a completely different strategy. She's changing the parameters of the anticipated event itself.
Right, she is altering the input data for her prospective memory.
She is taking control of the narrative before the brain can turn it into a nightmare. She notes that next time, she's going to sail in much warmer water, instantly eliminating the hypothermia fears.
Makes sense.
She's going to wear a massive bright orange life vest so there's zero chance of sinking. And the best part, she says she's going to literally tie herself to the mast of the boat like Bill Murray in the movie What About Bob?
I loved that detail.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. She figures if she programs her brain to anticipate that highly specific, somewhat ridiculous, perfectly safe scenario, the intention superiority effect will have absolutely nothing threatening to amplify. The danger simulator just won't have any danger to simulate. It is a humorous visual, but psychologically, she is hitting the nail on the head. If you alter the input data of the prospective memory, you change the cognitive load. You strip the upcoming event of its threat value, which entirely stops the cortisol response and protects your sleep architecture.
So, to pull all of this together, the next time you find yourself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. before a major event, just recognize what is happening. Your brain isn't broken. It's just rehearsing tomorrow's stress.
Right.
The intention superiority effect is prioritizing your upcoming task, keeping your hyperarousal system engaged, and temporarily blocking your restorative slow-wave sleep. But you don't have to just lie there and take it.
Not at all.
You can break the neurological association with stimulus control, you can quiet the background app with mindfulness, and you can lower your physical arousal with progressive muscle relaxation.
You know, this raises an important question, though, especially if we look at the brain as a programmable machine.
Okay, where are we going with this?
Well, we know the mechanism.
Yeah.
We know that anticipating a highly demanding, stressful event programs our brains to trigger a stress response, surfacing negative dreams and suppressing deep sleep.
Right.
What happens if we reverse engineer that process?
Oh, I like where you're taking this.
Yeah.
Hacking the intention superiority effect.
Exactly. Could you deeply, vividly visualize and anticipate a highly joyful, relaxing event right before you go to bed? If you spend 20 minutes consciously programming your brain to anticipate a purely positive, low-stakes outcome for tomorrow, could you utilize that same futuristic bias to your advantage? Like, instead of a cortisol trip, could that positive anticipation trigger a release of relaxing neurotransmitters, actively boosting your slow-wave sleep, and generating incredibly positive dreams as morning approaches?
You are basically telling the neurotic personal assistant, hey, tomorrow we are going to a beach. Run a simulation of that all night.
Exactly.
That is a brilliant thought experiment. And it's actually something you, the listener, can put to the test tonight.
Absolutely.
The next time you feel that early morning toss and turn coming on, the next time the danger simulator tries to boot up, recognize the program and see if you can change the simulation. Tie yourself to the mast, picture the warm water, and take your sleep back.